Good morning, dear Brandon and Brianna, or Brianna and Brandon. It's nice to imagine myself speaking to you. I imagine you listening to me. I have all too clear an image, I'm afraid, of myself speaking to you. So here I am, this, for the moment, quite bright and lovely morning. I'm sitting in my room directly opposite the window, and that's the light you can see shining on my face. We're in full lockdown and have been very successfully for a good many weeks now. And there's much to be enjoyed were it not for the peril and the tension and the fear that envelops all of us. So I'm here this morning to talk to you a little about William Congreve's play, The Way of the World. I'd like you to be able to set that a little in context. It's not an easy play to read because it's quite complicated. It has a lot of characters and a very complicated plot. But it has some very famous scenes, which are, I think, the important thing to concentrate on. So, to understand how this play came about, and to understand much of the 18th century in Britain, there's an issue as to when the 18th century happened, believe it or not, because some academic organizations have taken to teaching what they call the long 18th century, which includes a bit of the 1600s on the front end and a bit of the 1800s on the back end, and not just the 1700s. That's for reasons of identifying certain themes in the century that you're teaching, because obviously you're not teaching just exactly what happened between two dates, but what belonged to a certain period of human culture. So to go back to make the long 18th century even longer, you need to bear in mind that the English underwent a civil war during the 17th century. This was a generation after Shakespeare's death in 1616, when the Puritan movement in Britain, which was highly religious and hostile to displays of licentious behavior and immorality, which for them included music and dancing and all kinds of things that they wanted to ban, they brought a case against the king for his behavior, and this developed into a case against his bringing in foreign troops to suppress the Puritan rebels. It became a full-fledged civil war, and the Puritans won. And the king was executed, a terrible deed which mars the future of every country that takes that step. And this king was Charles I, the successor to James I, who came to the throne when Shakespeare was writing and for whom he wrote Macbeth, because of James I's great interest in witches and because the play features James I's ancestor, Banquo, a Scottish lord. And James was the sixth James to be king of Scotland, but the first of England. And so Charles, his son, came to the throne, and the division in the country over morals led to the Civil War, a terrible civil war, as they all are. And the Civil War led to the period of Puritan rule under the iron hand of the so-called Protector, Oliver Cromwell, who died, and his son Richard was unable to control the unruly and still divided, of course, country. And it wound up with, in 1660 we are now, it was the 1640s, where battles took place all over England, and the Puritans emerged victorious. In 1660, they brought back the old executed king's son, Charles II. Charles II, the Merry Monarch, as he was known, who had been living in Paris and having a fine old time. And when Charles came back from Paris, among the many things that he brought with him, he brought his court and a very cheerful collection of people they were too, because, of course, now, with the end of the Puritan Revolution, dancing and singing and music had broken out all over England. And he brought back something that was an absolute novelty to the British stage: women. Women had not been allowed on stage. Even long before the Puritan Revolution, Shakespeare had no women. His great female roles were written for wonderful male impersonators, some of whom were extraordinarily skilled, or detailed descriptions from the time, very few of whom now survived the change to having women on stage. Understandably, why should they have gone on playing women? Well, there were women to play women, but one or two of them were so good that they were missed because they were enchanting actors. After all, to be a great actor, it's not good enough to belong to one gender or another. You have to be a great actor. And some of them were greater actors as actors than some of the women who came to the fore, which included wonderful actresses like Mrs. Bracegirdle, who was the leading actress of the time and who played the leading part in the play that we're going to read, called The Way of the World. Now, many great playwrights emerged from this period of writing for women and for a more elaborate kind of stage decor than had ever been seen before. Very beautiful, very realistic. And the greatest of these new playwrights was William Congreve, who emerged in the last years of the 17th century and who wrote his masterpiece right on the cusp of the change of century. He wrote it in 1700, and it was a little too complicated for the liking of the crowd. In those days, plays didn't run for many more than, 8 or 9 performances, or 20 performances conceivably, I suppose, because there just weren't that many theatre goers in the London of the time. However, things adjust to the possible proportions, and so there were good runs and bad runs. And The Way of the World was judged not entirely a success. Like so many great works of art, time has ruled differently, and we now appreciate what an extraordinary masterwork it is. So along came this play, the fruit of a summer that Congreve the man spent in the company of other aristocratic figures and beautiful women, and a long, flirtatious, wine-bibbing summer. And its fruit was this extraordinary play, which has in it, as you'll see, a complex intrigue about money. Complex intrigues, and intrigues generally require money to fire them up a bit. Hard to follow, but requiring disguises and schemes and stratagems. And yet the literary and the emotional core of the play is an extraordinary series of scenes between the beautiful Millamant and her lover Mirabell, the smartest, wittiest man in town, who are clearly meant for each other. We know this as soon as they appear. They're the best. They are the he and she. But it takes a long time for he and she to get together in this play, as it must in all rom-coms. In this case, because she is unwilling to be bolted down and dwindle, as she puts it, into a wife. I think that line is from The Way of the World. It recurs in spirit in feeling in a number of Restoration comedies where it's clear who the grand couple are, the smartest pair who you want to get together, but what's going to stop them? Well, she is quite understandably concerned with winding up in a big house in the country where she'll bat around like a sole lonely bird in an aviary, short of company, short of fun, short of adventure and daring. And to become a wife is a prospect to make the bravest spirit quail and shiver, even if that means proximity with the beloved. So this concern about marriage, which has been of interest to mankind since mankind has existed, to what extent are you the property of your spouse who can limit the adventures of your life? It's an issue that concerns us as much now as it will have done 10,000 years ago. What possession do you have over your spouse who would like to go adventuring and maybe meet other people? So Millamant, the great beauty, flirts madly with Mirabell, but keeps him at bay. And you will read a series of scenes in which her willfulness, her flirtatiousness are very provoking and very feminine in the worst sense, and yet I would ask you to see it not as willful, mind-changing femininity. He refers to her as she's like contemplating a whirlwind within a whirlwind, but more to see it in the context of women over the centuries and the millennia who have no other weapons than their ability to keep men at bay. They have no jobs to go to. They have, over these many centuries and millennia, no ways of ensuring their own power over their future. So what can they do? They can ensure as much as they can their power over the men who love them. And as a result, they get categorized, pilloried, stereotyped as a kind of person, a kind of creature, these women who cannot make up their minds. It's not necessarily the case at all. They have to prevent themselves from being easy, stationary targets for men in order to keep alive their own power. So, and the sunshine's coming in now through my window. It's wonderful. It's also supposed to be terribly good for us. I hope you're getting more sunshine than I am these days. I'm not getting a lot, but I'm still very well. So the contest between Mirabell and Millamant leads to the most famous scene of the play, the one I'd like you to focus on, called the provisos scene. The provisos are quid pro quos. If you do this, then I'll do that. And they are the most wonderful description of how, in Millamant's view, their marriage will not collapse into being a safe, reliable thing on which Mirabell can depend, and from which all contest, all flirtation, all excitement, if you like, has disappeared. And she devises a program for marriage in which you both continue to have to woo each other. It's a most wonderful scene, and it's, I think, a recipe for marriage that few people can live up to, and yet we would all like to. And I think over the millennia of literature up to the present minute, there has been no scene in which the future of a relationship is mapped out more provokingly and excitingly, frankly, honestly, than that scene. Because rom-coms, one way or another, end happily, with a kind of closure in which a happy couple end up together. But what does it mean to end up together? How will they manage to be together without boring each other to death? That is the way of the world, and that is what our play is about. So I hope greatly that you find that proviso scene and enjoy it as much as I do and as much as audiences have over the past 300 years. I wish you well, my dears. Stay safe, please. Don't go out unless you have to. to do shopping. Don't meet anyone. Don't see anyone. Oh, my God. It sounds like the way of the world. Anyway, enjoy, and I look forward to communicating with you soon. Bye-bye now.